My number three is Marie Antoinette from 2006, directed by Sofia Coppola, starring Kirsten Dunst, Jason Schwartzman, Rip Torn, Steve Coogan, Judy Davis, a whole bunch of other people. Quick logline: the retelling of France's iconic but ill-fated queen Marie Antoinette, from a marriage to Louis the 17th to at 14 to her reign as queen at 19 and to the end of her reign as queen. So I put this movie on my list because to me, this soundtrack sort of underlines the character's inner feelings and mood. That's what always has jumped out to me about this. And I think what Sophia does here is very interesting. And this soundtrack was a big topic of conversation that, oh, why is there like a new wavy, post-punk soundtrack in this period drama and makes no sense. And I don't know, to me, it always made a lot of sense because it was sort of showing us that these people lived no matter how long ago and no matter what kind of lives they lived. At the core of it, they're still humans. She's just a girl who is flawed but also has their own pleasures and guilty pleasures, and you're sort of getting a window into her mindset. But I think what's even more interesting and was more interesting to me back then even was the juxtaposition of the classical music that is used in a very ceremonious way. So all the ceremonies that are kind of, preordained, whether it's you waking up in the morning and getting ready montage and what have you, the performances that happen that are musical in the movie, they are all classical music, even though a lot of it is original classical music. But then her inner thoughts and feelings and moods as Marie Antoinette, they are all underscored by modern music. So I don't know. I always found that juxtaposition so cool and kind of seamless. I think this movie becomes contemporary. It becomes a lot more relatable. It's a movie that I never think of as a period drama because of the music. I don't know why. Part of it also because the way it's shot. You kind of feel like these people live in Versailles. Like, every single period drama movie, as much as I love them, they are precious in a way, right? Like with the clothes, and you're getting like a bird's eye view kind of view into their lives. But before I keep going further, had you watched this movie before? And if so, what did you think of it and the soundtrack?
Yeah, so I'd seen it when it came out, and didn't like it for a lot of the reasons, because actually I didn't think the soundtrack worked at all when I saw it, and just was like, why are we trying to feel empathetic towards Marie Antoinette? Like, I just couldn't get past that. And actually, I'd been wanting to, because for some reason this has come up in the zeitgeist, at least online in the last like 3 or 4 years. People are talking about it a lot more, and sort of like reappraising it, because it didn't do that well either, if I recall at the time. So I'd wanted actually to rewatch it. And I'm glad, like, now I had an excuse for this podcast to put it on. And I will say that I understood more the artistic intentions better, and did get to the point where, yes, I do have empathy for Marie Antoinette as a human. Not that I am upset by what happened to her, because that, the history has to run its course. But that worked for me a little bit more. The music did sometimes, but it was odd. Like, I found myself being more engrossed in the movie during the scenes where they use the classical music instead of the modern thing. But the movie in my mind was, I appreciate the movie more than I dismissed it at the time. I will say, I mean, that was, it came out almost 20 years ago. I definitely dismissed it at the time as like, oh, this is a giant, like, creative mistake, because I didn't understand it. I now understand what Sophia was doing. Parts of it worked better for me. But I appreciate it more for what she was trying to do than the execution, at least, worked on me. I mean, the sequence that worked the best for me was the sequence where at their masquerade ball and you're hearing the contemporary, or not contemporary music, the 80s music, because that feels like, oh, this could be sort of happening now. Like, you can have a masquerade ball now where they'd be playing, I can't remember what that track was, some New Order song or what have you, in a ball that was happening in 2007. And that definitely made me feel like I could have been in any sort of teen high school drama. That really worked. But some of the other stuff for me, I don't know, it didn't really connect. But I'm very glad I watched this again. Like, again, my appreciation for the film is much more now than it was.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I don't know. For me, it always worked. Like the Isle of Candy kind of macaron, pink, drenched in pink champagne
that was cool.
montage.
Yeah.
So cool. It always
that is really
worked
cool.
on. Yeah. Whenever I think of this movie, whenever I whenever I eat a macaron, I think about that song.
Yeah, that sequence
So
is fantastic. Yeah, very, very well
fantastic,
done.
right?
Yeah, the
Yeah,
colors, the way that it's shot, the music.
all
No,
of it.
totally. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's the thing, right? And at least this will come through my movies is that the way the film is shot, I think is intricately linked with the music choices. Like if this
Hmm.
movie was shot in like a, pristine, kind of distanced, precious kind of way, the music would be too jarring. I think the
Hmm.
reason it works is because it feels very handheld and intimate. You're in there, the colors pop, and it feels contemporary because of that, because you feel like you're living with these people. I
Right.
also
Right.
love the whole montage of, I forget what song it is, but it's a modern kind of new wavy song when it's a birthday and they stay up late to watch the sunrise
Oh
and
yeah.
then
Yeah.
walk around after that. Like it's such a human thing to do. Like this is somebody who obviously has a lot of wealth and access, but is very lonely and has all these pressures put on her, and her husband is kind of on a different planet. They don't really have a connection up to that point. So all she has is this gaggle of friends who aren't even friends really.
Right.
And you sort of get this, that song to me strikes this balance of some sort of support, but there's also loneliness and
Oh
melancholy
yeah.
that, oh yeah, we had fun, we drank a bunch, we've woken up, now what?
Right.
And
Right.
that's sort of a feeling that is just so universal, has always been around, will always be around. And I think that's what she gets at with the music, which humanizes her,
Hmm.
no matter how flawed she might be, but it humanizes her. So, and
Yeah.
then on a musical level, this movie introduced me to kind of post-punk and then punk music.
Mm.
I don't think I'd really cared for classical music per se either. At
Oh,
least
okay.
couldn't remember. Maybe there were movies that got me interested in that, but this was a big one that kind of got me into just
Oh,
paying
cool.
attention. Yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. No, I think which actually too, maybe another reason why the film, or at least the music, doesn't work that well. I mean, I'm not a big fan of the post-punk new wave scene anyway. Like that's music that never
Mm,
really spoke to me.
mm,
So I think that made it a little harder potentially for me to get into the film. But I think you're right in terms of how it does, yeah, humanizes her and really makes you think. And this is something that came through more to me in this watch than the original one. It's like these people, meaning the royals in France at least, and maybe royals in other places too, they're also caught up in this system. Like they're not
yeah,
representative of it. They're not really in charge of anything. It's like the machinations of a monarchy are sort of even bigger than even the king and queen are. They're
totally.
caught up in this too. Like they don't have opinions or politics or much of anything. They're just going along for the ride, much like a peasant would also be stuck in that system, or
Hmm.
a lord for a certain extent too, potentially. And that
Hmm.
it's the system itself that she's a victim of. And she just
Hmm.
caught up in the fact that, like, hey, we have to throw out this system because it's not working anymore. And okay, well, you're part of that system, so you have to go too. So and it's like, okay, that's sad on a certain level because this is a human being that has to get chucked out. But I guess I felt a lot more empathy for her in this time of just again being caught up in something that she doesn't even really want to be in. It's
No,
not
and
giving her
so
pleasure.
young.
Right. It's yeah, she's sent off to another country basically as a political
Yeah,
move to make Austria and France get closer together. Like she has
yeah.
no love for this other guy or
No,
really even desire to live this life. Like she's trapped too, and that's I think the loneliness
yeah.
comes across as well in those scenes with the music too.
Yeah, no. And it's just a gorgeous film. That's the other thing of like, I hadn't seen it in years now, but
Hmm.
just to watch it, in its full color glory, it's just such a fun experience. My only little note about this movie is that I think it can be a little faster. There are definitely moments in the middle or what have you where it drags a little bit, but
Hmm.
other than that, I think this is one of her best, I would say. And also a great Kirsten Dunst performance. She looks
Yeah.
incredible and is able to kind of straddle that line of somebody who's, relishing all this, but is also a victim of it, is also
Right.
very lonely, but is trying to compensate for that loneliness with more enjoyment. Again, very human things,
Right.
She's
Right.
able to strike all of that. And it's not a theatrical movie at all. Like a lot of period dramas have, big monologues and a lot of precious scene stealing kind of, acting.
Hmm.
It's not at all. Like it's so low key, her acting. There's no accent work either. Like she just
Right.
speaks the way she does,
Yeah.
So I think it's quite brilliant.
Yeah, no, that's a good shout out to her. I do think the movie sort of lives or dies on that performance, because that's, to your point about it being a little slow, there isn't really much going on in most of the movie other than just sort of like a cinema verite look at her life.
True.
And what she does. And the plot is, there isn't really much of one. They don't actually deal a lot with the politics that are going on that lead to, the king and queen having to flee and then getting deposed. Right. Yeah. Because that's probably, she wasn't necessarily involved in that. Again, that was like the system and things beyond, her and Louis. Well, no, necessarily not beyond Louis' control. I think he could have done some things differently to protect the monarchy. He definitely made some mistakes. But her performance was great, and that made me appreciate a lot more. And two, like Sophia's directing, I think the movie, though she's always had a very good eye, even dating back to like Virgin Suicides and Lost in Translation, like she's very good at, the visuals, but this movie I think is something else. So yeah, I'm glad I saw it again. I have a more appreciation for it now.
That's good. I'm glad to hear it.
Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now, or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.